Okay, now we're back to solving logs when the log is on one side, but now we will be using the techniques we talked about in example problems 12, 11, and 10. Okay, but this time we're going to have some factoring involved, so it's going to kind of take a little bit of an extra step. Okay, so the very first thing when we solve log equations, any logarithm that contains an x on the inside, we must set it greater than 0, okay, and solve. So my first one is x is greater than 0. This one is x plus 9 is greater than 0. Okay, so this one, to solve for it, I'm going to bring my 9 to the other side, which the way I'm going to do that, the opposite of 9 is negative 9. So I'm going to subtract 9 on both sides. 9 minus 9 cancels out and turns to 0. 0 minus 9 is negative 9. Okay, so my two inequalities I'm looking at is x is greater than 0 and x is greater than negative 9. Alright, so far we've only had one inequality to deal with. Now we got two going on. So you're probably like, holy hot to Miss Long, how do I deal with this when there's two inequalities? Well, let's think about it. My answer at the end has to work in both inequalities. So let's say my answer is like, I don't know, negative 10. First of all, does negative 10 work in either of these? No. Negative 10 is not greater than negative 9, and negative 10 is not greater than 0. Okay, so that's still not helping me. Let me pick something greater than negative 9. Let's see, I'll pick negative 5. Negative 5 is greater than negative 9, but negative 5 is not greater than 0. So this one ultimately failed us because I got an answer that worked in this one, but it didn't work in this one. And when we get our answers, they must work in both. Okay, so whenever you guys have more than one inequality at the start, rule of thumb is you pick the inequality with the bigger number. Because if our answer has to work, and we have more than one inequality, the one that it'll work in is the one that's further up the number line. Okay, or it'll work in the one that has the bigger number. Because if it has to be greater than a number, it better be greater than the largest number. Okay, which if none of that made sense, just know that whichever one has the bigger number is the one we will be focusing on. So this is the one that we will have to check our answers with. Technically, you could have both there and just check with both, but this kind of saves you some time. Alright, so now that that's out of the way, we must first of all combine these logs into one logarithm using properties of log. Which, since we have two logs that are subtracting, holy hot dog, you guys already knew we're going to be using the product property. Okay, which the product property says that if I have two things that are added in separate logs, I can combine them into one log and multiply each piece of the log. So this will be log of x times x plus 9. And it still equals 1. Okay, so now that I have one log on one side of my equation, I must solve for the x's, which when our x's are trapped inside the logarithm, the way they get out is to convert this bad boy into an exponential. Okay, so when we do that, remember, if you don't see a base, secretly, the base is 10. Okay, and when we solve this, the base of the log is going to stay on the same side as the base of the exponential. So since my base is on the left-hand side, it's going to stay there. So the base of my exponential is a 10. It's the same as the base of the log. And then remember, these two will trade spots. So my 1 is going to become the exponent of the 10. And all that's going to go on the other side. X times x plus 9. Okay, now you know Miss Long, she likes the x's to be on the left. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate my equation and write my x's on the left-hand side just because that's what I prefer. Sorry guys, it's a personal preference and I'm OCD about it, so sorry. Alright, and then 10 to the first will go over here, which I can go ahead and solve that part. 10 to the first power is just 10. Okay, so let's start solving this, which when I have something outside of a parenthesis, okay, the way we handle that is through distributing. Gonna use that distributed property. Okay, so x times x is an x squared. You add the exponents, which each of these secretly have a 1, so 1 plus 1 is 2. And x times 9 is 9x. Okay, you guys, so I have a quadratic, and I need to find the x values of a quadratic. The only way to do that, well, there's more than one way, but one of the ways that we do that is through factoring. Okay, and once we factored, then we set the factors equal to 0. So we're going to be sliding and dividing and then setting each of our factors equal to 0 to figure out our solutions for this. But before we can even do that, you guys, we must get this in standard form, which means this should equal 0. So I need to bring 10 to the other side, which the way I do that, the opposite of positive 10 is a negative 10. So I'm going to subtract both sides, which 10 minus 10 is 0. Okay, and if you look on this side, I can't combine any of these terms. They are not like terms. So I'm just going to kind of tack negative 10 behind 9x. So currently my equation is x squared plus 9x minus that 10 right there that can't combine anything equals 0. So yay, my equation equals 0. So now I can start sliding and dividing, which I'm going to bring this up here and write it so we'll have some space to work. Alright guys, so the first step we're going to be doing is our slide part, which actually before we do that, let's label our A, B, and our C. So the A is the number in front of the x squared, which, since I don't see a number, there is secretly a 1 in front of my x squared. Okay, so my A value is secretly a 1. The B is the number in front of my x, which the number in front of x to the first is 9. And then C is the number on the end without the variable. Okay guys, let's start sliding and dividing. Okay, so I'm going to bring my 1 over. I'm going to slide the 1 over to the negative 10. So I'm sliding the 1 over, slide the 1, and then you're going to multiply the A times the C. So I'm sliding my A value, slide the A, and then we do A times C. Sorry, that's a slide A times C. Sorry guys. So we're going to slide the A over, okay? Okay, so 1 times negative 10 is negative 10. So this is my A times C. Okay, but I cannot forget the divide part. That is just as important. Okay, I'm going to set it up. So the divide, this is kind of what our final answer will look like. And whatever we add or subtract to our x is what we're gonna divide by whatever we slid over. We slid over our A value, which is 1. So at the end, I'm gonna be dividing by 1. Okay, so now let's talk about the numbers that go inside of our parenthesis. Okay, that's when we find the two numbers that multiply to equal the AC, which is our slide part, which I already know is 10, and add to equal B, which B is 9. So let's think about it. We need two numbers that both multiply to be negative 10 and add to be 9. Holy hot dog, you guys figured it out. It is 10 and negative 1. 10 times negative 1 is negative 10, and 10 minus 1 is 9. Okay, so these are the numbers that go in my parenthesis. So I have a positive 10, so it'll be plus 10, and I have a negative 1, so it'll be minus 1. Okay, so before we can start setting these equal to 0, we need to simplify our fractions down. So 10 divided by 1 is positive 10, so plus 10. And x minus 1 over 1 is just 1, so it'll be minus 1. Oh no. Sorry guys, I did not mean to do that. Okay, and from here, all you guys have to do is set each of these factors equal to 0 and solve. So we have x plus 10 equals 0. And x minus 1 equals 0. And then we'll be done with this one. Alright, so I'm trying to move my 10 to the other side, which you guessed it. Since it's positive 10, the way we move it over is by doing the opposite, which is by subtracting 10. 10 minus 10 is 0. Cancels out. 0 minus 10 is negative 10. So one of my x values, which I think is correct, but we'll have to check at the end, one of them I think is negative 10. We'll see how that works out. Or let's see what happens on this side. That way you guys can see a little better. Alright, so on this side we're going to add 1 on both sides because positive 1 is the opposite of negative 1. Okay, negative 1 plus 1 cancels and turns to 0. 0 plus 1 is 1. So these are what I think are my answers. Okay, I want to box them, but I'm not going to box them yet till I check them. So let's see here. I must check both of my answers back at the start. So both of these answers better be greater than 0, or I will get an answer in my log which is negative, which is not allowed. Okay, so let's see here. Is negative 10 greater than 0? Oh no, it didn't work. Sad face. So this one does not work. And remember, when things don't work out, we cross them out and call them extraneous. So that's an extraneous answer. All right, let's see if 1 works. So is 1 greater than 0? Holy hot dog, yes it is. So yay, we're excited. And this one actually is our answer. Yay! So my only answer that worked out for this one is x equals 1. Awesome job, you guys.